Well, let's discuss now the Presidential Protection Unit's role in ensuring that the former president was arrested last night or in the early hours of this morning. Of course, there were days of drama and attempts to avoid jail. Zuma is now behind bars. He was arrested in the early hours of this morning, then handed over to the Escort Correctional Center. His VIP protection service left his home and made its way to that facility. Rory Steyn, a security expert with NSA Global Security Consultant, joining me now. Of course, Rory himself was one of the Presidential Protection Unit members long ago under the presidency of Nelson Mandela. Rory, you were one of those people who protected President Nelson Mandela, so you know how hard it can be because bonds are formed, relations are formed. Yes, it's duty that you are performing, but you are part of that unit. Just the tonality of what you've been observing, the texture of it just from the outside, it must not have been easy for members of the former president's protection unit to arrest him and take him to jail last night, or am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong, and good afternoon, Dan. It's lovely to be speaking to you again, and good afternoon to everybody listening. You're correct. It's not those of my former colleagues were put into a very difficult position from the get-go. But let me just backtrack and answer your question. Absolutely, there is a bond that forms. But what we must remember is that there are two dimensions to the protection of, in this case, a president or a former president. One, you're obviously protecting a person and you're protecting his or her physical safety. But actually above that, Dan, you're protecting the office. Irrespective of who the incumbent is, the Presidential Protection Unit members protect the office of the President of the Republic of South Africa. Now, as Brigadier Naidu was pointing out earlier today on your channel, the members of the Presidential Protection Unit now, and I refer to them as my former colleagues, and in my day, we were all members of the South African Police Service. And we strived very hard to set a world-class standard, a high standard against which we performed the duty of protecting the incumbent, the head of state, whomever that may be. So there are various principles, documents, processes that guide how those police officers that are assigned as presidential protectors perform their duties. So one is very obvious. It's the standing orders of the South African Police Service. Those police officers follow the instructions of their commanders at the Presidential Protection Unit, and they are all part of the greater South African Police Service, headed by a commissioner. The political head is, of course, the Minister of Police. And above all of that, Dan, there are laws that govern the way that the South African police operate. So if you're a detective, you have to follow the Criminal Procedure Act when you search and seize and arrest a suspect.
Yeah, watching what happened. Sorry, Rory, to come in there. Just thanks for explaining all that background and the context and the regulations and the rules. But watching from far what was transpiring, I mean, we were not there, but it seems to me there was some level of professionalism in how they managed that arrest.
Absolutely. Well, you see, I would question whether, in fact, it was an arrest, because the president is constantly in the company of and under the care of those protectors. So I don't know whether they actually placed their hand on his shoulder and read him his rights, the judge's rules, and placed him under arrest. I don't think that was the case. However, you are correct, Dan, and I was coming to that when I was saying that we set a very high standard, and it was gratifying to me as a former member of that unit that was there, pretty much from the beginning, to see the level of professionalism with which my former colleagues conducted their duties, because it wasn't always the case. There was a time when members of our unit were accused of brandishing automatic weapons out of the windows of the escort vehicles in a motorcade against ordinary citizens of the country, you and me, who were using the same road as the motorcade. That is unacceptable. But you are correct, Dan. What I saw last night was members doing their job as police officers, because above everything, the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, as the highest law, must govern all of our actions. And those guys were put in they were really caught between the rock and a hard place, but they did the right thing, and they got, under the terms of that court order from our highest court, they got former President Zuma to a correctional service facility. And it mustn't have been easy. I commend them.
How could it have played out? I mean, okay, there's an order, and the deadline is looming. So, I mean, you say you don't imagine that there was a hand on the shoulder to say, now we are arresting you because there's an order there. But there might have been some kind of discussion. Would that, the wording for that communication have come from the protection unit's head directly, or would it have come from the Minister of Police or the Commissioner of Police? Just to understand, where would you, if you were there, whose orders are you following?
I would have followed the orders of the court, in that the court instructed that the minister and the commissioner had to deliver former President Zuma to a correctional services facility. So, as a police officer, you are obliged to obey legal commands from your superiors, and even superior to our superiors is the highest court in the land. So it comes down through those levels, Dan. And every police officer, when he swears the oath of office on the day that he signs on, before he even goes, or her or she goes to the police college to undergo training, you swear to uphold the laws of the Republic of South Africa, of which, I say again, the Constitution is the highest one. And everybody is equal before the law, including former presidents.
Yeah. So in how you'd then carry out that order, you'd have to be professionally diligent, and the person you're protecting, the office you're protecting, will have to understand the need for following that order and being professionally diligent.
Yes, indeed. So I'm pretty sure that the team leader, which was the position that I served Madiba in, the greatest privilege of my life, the team leader would have been involved very much in explaining this. I'm sure there were senior figures there. I'm sure there were politicians involved. I'm sure there were legal advisors and lawyers giving their opinions. But at the end of the day, that team leader has got to lead his team of men and women in performing that task. And I can tell you, Dan, that I didn't take, that's the wrong word. I went to court on 2 occasions with President Mandela. You will, of course, remember the very famous Louis Late incident when the president of South African Rugby took the president to court. And because of the importance of obeying the court, the president went to court. And he didn't want to be there. You could see by his facial expressions he wasn't happy, but he did it because it was the right thing to do. And it was because a court of law instructed or insisted or requested him to be there. And you have to admire that. Everybody is equal under the law and in the eyes of the law. And if the highest court of the land tells you that that is what you've got to do, go and spend 15 months behind bars, then you have no option. But it doesn't mean it was easy for those men and women who work with him day and night, 24/7, to have to accompany him there. So again, I say that I did see a great degree of professionalism from my former colleagues, and I'm very glad that it was so, because it could have been a very ugly scenario had he resisted further.
Rory Steyn, as usual, always a pleasure talking to you. I'm pleased to see you. You're still good and looking strong. Please take care. We are under the 3rd wave of the coronavirus. That's Rory Steyn. He's now a security expert.